The Hunter is one of those classes that goes through tons and tons of changes in Cataclysm. In fact, the very core system of how a Hunter operates changes entirely. Going from Wrath of the Lich King, where your primary resource is mana, to actually now being... I'll save that because it's actually change number 1. But the Hunter over the years has always been in a good place. From a very top level view, the Hunter isn't massively different from how it is in Wrath of the Lich King in terms of how you play it. Of course, you do have this new resource to manage. There are 3 specs that all play very differently and bring very different things to the table, but enough has changed to make it still an extremely interesting class to play. In fact, on EU realms, my main ult is a survival Hunter, and I can honestly say it's a lot more fun to play a Hunter in Cata than it is in Wrath. So instead of telling you every single change, I will do an absolute monstrous deep dive into the Hunter in Cataclysm in a future video. But instead, today we're going to look at my top 10 Cataclysm Hunter changes. Kicking things off straight at number 1 has got to be focus. This is what I alluded to at the start of the video. You now have a focus bar instead of a mana bar, and each of your abilities cost X amount of focus. For example, an arcane shot costs 22, a multi-shot costs 40, explosive shot is 44, and the list goes on. When you spend your focus on abilities, it does naturally regen. But when you use your filler, which is steady shot or Cobra Shot, which we'll get to in a moment, as you can see, your steady shot will regenerate 9 focus. So not only is it always regenerating anyway, you can force more focus back using your filler abilities. There'll be plenty of times in Wrath of the Lich King where you've struggled for mana, you've had to switch to Aspect of the Viper. Well, that's no more. Aspect of the Viper doesn't exist anymore, obviously, because you don't need mana. It just feels like a much, much better spec to play. Yes, sometimes rather than being mana starved, you're focus starved, but you know you can very quickly get it back by spamming some steady shots or spamming some Cobra Shots and getting a really good rotation going. Most of your utility abilities like Feign Death or Deterrence or Disengage, these of course do not cost focus, so you don't need to worry about always saving some for an emergency, and neither do traps. Traps are completely free to cast as well. Coming in at number 2 is no ammo. Quite a simple one, really. There's no longer an ammo slot. It doesn't matter what weapon you use, whether it's a crossbow, a bow, a gun, you do not have ammo anymore. And it really is just a quality of life change over everything else. Of course, this isn't just applicable to a Hunter, because if there was a warrior, for example, using a gun, he also no longer needs ammo. I can't tell you the amount of times I've actually run out of ammo, but that's mainly because I'm a really bad Hunter. Coming in at number 3 is the ability to auto-shoot whilst moving. So again, during Wrath of the Lich King, what you'll be doing is looking at a swing timer, and you'll always want to be making sure that you're stood still just as the swing timer is about to come to an end. Well, that doesn't matter anymore. You can literally cast absolutely everything on the move. There are certain reasons why you wouldn't want to do this. Sniper training, for example, is one of them, where it increases the critical strike chance of your kill shot by 15%, and after remaining stationary for 6 seconds, your steady shot and Cobra Shot deal 6% more damage. So there's still lots of reasons why you do want to be completely stood still, but it's not even just the ability to auto-shoot while moving that's good here. In Wrath of the Lich King, multi-shot requires you to stand still for a second to cast. Well, no more. You are free to move and cast absolutely every single ability at your disposal. The primary downside to moving while shooting is, of course, you can't use Cobra Shot or steady shot, which is the way that you get your extra focus back. If you know there's about to be a period of time where you do need to move from point A to point B, and you make sure your focus is pretty high so you can do the next 2 to 3 abilities on the move, you're winning. But what if that just wasn't possible and you're going to have to move for far longer than your focus is going to allow? Well, that brings us to number 4, which is Aspect of the Fox. This is a brand new aspect to Cataclysm where basically when you've got it on, you can steady shot and Cobra Shot while moving. Not only that, if you receive any melee attacks, you also get focus as well. So not only is it really, really good for PvP when you're trying to kite people, it's also great for PvE where you do need to do that movement. Of course, while you've got Fox on, you can't have Hawk on, so you are going to be losing just over 3.2k attack power, but it's still better to lose the attack power, but be able to continue casting for as long as you need to move for. So what this does mean is while you're moving from point A to point B, and let's say it's a really long move from point A to point B, you can continuously keep getting that focus back by using your Cobra Shot or steady shot, depending what spec you are. So while we're talking about being able to move around and being able to cast multi-shot without having to stand still, I feel like this brings us nicely onto point number 5, which is actually just a talent, but it's such a powerful talent that I wanted to talk about it. And that's Serpent Spread for survival, where targets hit by your multi-shot are also afflicted by a serpent sting equal to 9 seconds of its total duration. So when you've got lots of targets all at once that you can put a multi-shot on, all of them then get serpent sting on them them as well. This, on top of your trap, just makes for absolutely amazing AoE and even just cleave potential. It is only survival that's able to actually do this because obviously it's very deep down in the talent tree, but the other specs do get assistance to cleave or AoE as well. For example, bombardment for marksman, where when you critically hit with multi-shot, the focus cost of multi-shot is reduced by 50% for 5 seconds. So it does just mean when you get a crit, you can just chain those multi-shots one after the other, which does actually make marksman incredibly fun. Coming in at number 6 is a brand new ability which I think most hunters are going to really enjoy, and that's Trap Launcher. I alluded to this at the start of the video where I said about trap weaving, but without actually weaving. That's because Trap Launcher on a 1.5 second cooldown allows you to fire traps wherever you want. Well, within a 40-yard range. This just means while you're pumping into a trash pack or pumping into a boss, you can just shoot in explosive traps without having to run into melee and disengage back out. It also makes being able to CC targets extremely easy as well, because you can fire ice traps straight to a location, as well as any other traps you might want to shoot in, like snake traps or even slow-in traps. But I feel like overall, Trap Launcher is an absolutely amazing ability. It does cost 20 focus by default, but there is a glyph that reduces it down to 10. There's so many things you can use this for that just make life much easier as a hunter in raids. If your tank is kiting ads around on Maloriak in Blackwing Descent, for example, they need slow-in traps put down, but you don't need to worry about where you're placing them. You just look where the tank is, look at the direction they're running in, Trap Launcher, throw your trap over at them, jobs are good 'em. I must admit, it probably is my favourite ability that's been added to hunters in Cataclysm. And now coming in at number 7, I've mentioned it so many times in this video already, and you might be like, what is Cobra Shot? Well, what Cobra Shot is it's basically another steady shot. So Cobra Shot deals weapon damage plus 537 in the form of nature damage, whereas steady shot does 106% weapon damage plus 549. But Cobra Shot's nature damage, whereas steady shot is physical damage, which will be reduced by armor. So Cobra Shot in most cases will do more damage, but the damage is not just the reason you're using it, because if we was to do a Cobra Shot now, that Cobra Shot done 5.6k. If we do a steady shot, that steady shot done 3.9k. So it's quite clear to see that on a target with high amounts of armor, Cobra Shot is always going to win anyway. But you're using it because it also increases the duration of your Serpent Sting on the target by 6 seconds, and this has no cap. So as long as you're Cobra Shotting fairly frequently, your Serpent Sting will always be on the target. This is why it's quite important to switch to things like Aspect of the Fox while moving to make sure that that Serpent Sting never drops off. It also does snapshot with all of your buffs. So if we just wait for a non-crit at the moment, which it seems to want to crit an awful lot, which is good. So it's ticking for 1851 at the moment. Now this was with my trinket fully stacked, and I waited for the Gnomish X-ray scope to proc before I applied it. If I remove all buffs and then apply it again, you'll see it's now only doing 1683. So it's doing 1683 even though I have got my trinket fully stacked. So it's important that when you get loads of big buffs on the go, you want to get a nice big Serpent Sting, and then you want to keep it on for the entire fight. So getting a real big snapshot on that Serpent Sting it's going to be amazing, and especially if you've got two targets, like two bosses that are stood next to each other, so you get that Serpent Sting out with, let's say, a multi-shot when they're stood next to each other, and then you're just keeping that on both of them for the entire fight. But Cobra Shot is incredibly strong, and I think you can see now why. Even though this wasn't actually going to make it into the video, I'm going to mention it anyway because Chimera Shot does do the same thing. So Marksman does have the ability, of course, to snapshot a big Serpent Sting as well. Do you play Hunter but ever wish you could stealth? What's coming in at number 8 then you're going to absolutely love? Camouflage. Camouflage is on a 1 minute cooldown, but it does last for 1 minute as well, so you can actually just keep this up 100% of the time. What Camouflage actually does is you blend into your surroundings, causing you and your pet to be untargetable by ranged attack, also reduces the range of which enemy creatures can detect you, and provides stealth while stationary. You can lay traps while camouflaged, but any damage done by you or your pet will cancel the effect, and it cannot be cast while in combat. So as you can see, while I'm camouflage moving around, I can still use Trap Launcher and fire traps. I can even CC while I'm camouflaged, and that won't break the camouflage. And as soon as it goes down, I can very quickly put it straight back on again. Like it says, as long as you are actually stood completely stationary, you are stealthed. So you are the equivalent of a rogue. It's only when you move, people will start to see you. But in PvE, the mobs will see you at a very reduced range. And I just wanted to come in here to show you that it does not function as a stealth. Even though it says it reduces the range at which they'll detect you, it's still a very, very short range, as you can see there. Coming in at number 9 is actually about pets, and it's primarily to do with beast mastery, because many of the big buffs can now be covered by hunters' pets. Cats and spirit beasts being able to bring agility and strength. A Silphid pet can even bring a power word fortitude. Boars, hyenas, and rhinos can bring the 30% bleed damage, which is the equivalent to mangle from a druid. But the big important one is probably bloodlust and heroism. Now, this is Beastmaster specific. But if you've got a core hound, they can bring ancient hysteria, which is literally the equivalent to time warp from a mage or bloodlust and heroism from a shaman. Even though BM is not a top tier raiding spec, even in Cataclysm, having that BM off spec where you have got multiple pets just available to fill in for whatever buff you're missing can sometimes be a bigger DPS increase to the group than you, for example, being survival and just doing more personal damage. So putting the time in to understand exactly what pets bring which buffs and which ones you consider the most important to have with you at any time is going to be extremely important in Cataclysm. Which leads us very nicely onto number 10. Currently in Wrath of the Lich King, you can only summon one pet at a time. You do have Cool Stabled Pet, which has got a 5-minute cooldown where you can access and swap your current pet with your stabled pets. Overall, it's a bit annoying. From an extremely small stable in Wrath of the Lich King, to by the time you're level 85, just being able to carry around 5 pets with you at any time makes life very easy. So when I was saying earlier about making sure you've got a pet for each occasion, especially if you've got a BM off-spec, you can see how it's not even inconvenient. You're not limited to that 5-minute cooldown of Cool Stabled Pet, nor do you have a tiny stable anymore. You can go out and collect 20 different pets to have stabled and have 5 active in your slots. So depending on the raid you're going to, you can switch whichever pets in that you want, thinking, oh, well, maybe we're going to need Bloodlust for the last boss. We might need 5% crit for a boss. We might need the bleed debuff for another boss. You're literally like a Swiss Army knife of debuffs and buffs. It also does mean that you can just go out as a hunter and collect more pets, like I probably should, only having the wolf. That's all I need. But as a collector, you can go out and get one of each pet and never have to worry. I feel like this video barely scratched the surface of Cataclysm hunters, but hopefully gave you a little bit of information that maybe you forgot about or you just didn't know. Once all these top 10 videos are done, as I say, we're going to be breaking down professions, raids, dungeons, deep dives into all of the classes and specs, and so much more. So be sure to like the video if you liked it, and do press like, and while you're down there, subscribe as well. Consider following me on kick.com/Scottejaye. See you on the next one.